A noseless plumber explodes in a gas leak, returns through children's dreams carrying a cursed plunger, and starts rummaging through their deepest fears like Freddy Krueger with a Home Depot rewards card. This was not Nickelodeon's Halloween special. This was episode 2. And somehow, Zeke the Plumber was only the fourth most alarming thing about Camp Anawanna behind syrup-based torture, an invisible camp director, and the fact that one underqualified counselor was apparently supervising every child in California. Then, after just 26 episodes, the whole camp vanished. Not because kids stopped watching, they did not. Camp Anawanna was defeated by denied raises, a cheap relocation plan, and the terrifying villain that eventually kills every childhood dream, corporate budgeting. So grab your bug juice and locate your emergency plunger, because this is how one tiny Nickelodeon comedy became a permanent summer memory and why the camp closed while everybody was still singing. It begins with Michael arriving at Camp Anawanna, where Budnick and Donkey Lips immediately steal his boxer shorts and raise them up the flagpole. The campers salute. The show explains its title and completes its first human resources investigation in under 5 minutes. Efficient. Welcome to Camp Anawanna. Population, 7 children, 1 counselor, and a public address system that may be legally sentient. Michael is our nervous new kid. Budnick is the red-headed warlord with a heavy metal mullet that looks like it was cut during a Metallica drum solo. Donkey Lips is his reluctant muscle. Sponge is a walking encyclopedia nobody ordered but everyone will eventually need. Telly treats recreational sports like the Cuban Missile Crisis. Dina has arrived dressed for a much nicer camp with indoor plumbing and a Nordstrom. CC is sweet, dreamy, and one conversation with a mushroom away from joining the forest permanently. And then there is Ugg. Ugg is the counselor allegedly in charge, in the same way Zach Morris was allegedly a student. The genius is that Michael enters as our normal kid. He is nervous, awkward, and immediately trapped between Budnick's bullying and the strange possibility that this lawless pine-scented dictatorship might become home. But Michael is not a perfect little morality robot. He lies, he schemes, he panics, he joins terrible plans with the speed of a child hearing an adult say, "I'll be back in 10 minutes," and the adults had left the room. That was the fantasy. Danny Cooksey, who played Budnick, later described summer camp as a child's first real taste of freedom. No parents, no school bell. No one checking your browser history because the family computer was still busy screaming through a dial-up modem. Just a lake, your friends, and an adult named Ugg who could be defeated by coordinated eye contact. The show came from a 1986 humor book called Salute Your Shorts, Life at Summer Camp, written by Steve Slavkin and Thomas Hill, who had met at camp themselves. A pilot was filmed in 1990. Then development stalled long enough for the children to perform the one stunt no production can prevent: puberty. By the time Nickelodeon finally ordered the series, nearly all the campers had to be recast. Danny Cooksey, Michael Bauer, and Kirk Bailey remained, but most of the pilot's young faces were replaced. So Camp Anawanna had experienced massive employee turnover before it even opened. Spiritually, it was already a spirit Halloween. Slavkin wanted children who looked like actual children. Almost no makeup. Hair permitted to behave like hair. Buck teeth were not treated like a 5-alarm production emergency. When Megan Berwick, who played Zizi, got braces, the show simply wrote them into the story. That is it. No makeover montage, no very special orthodontic episode, no braces reveal, sponsored by Trapper Keeper. Salute Your Shorts looked directly into the camera and said, "Yes, children have teeth. Continue filming." That choice is one reason the show still feels alive. These were not polished 26-year-olds carrying geometry books while pretending to worry about the 8th grade dance. I'm looking at you, Jason Earls. He was 28 playing a 15-year-old on Hannah Montana. They looked like kids from your cafeteria. Their bodies, voices, clothes, and confidence levels were all still under construction. The 1990s gave us plenty of television teenagers who looked ready to refinance a mortgage. Camp Anawanna gave us campers who looked like they had genuinely lost a permission slip. At the 2026 anniversary reunion, Megan Madhavi, credited on the show as Megan Berwick, described the production as one of the best experiences of her childhood and praised the crew for protecting the young cast. Cooksey said the Los Angeles production existed in its own little bubble, away from Nickelodeon's Florida operation. Apparently, the The secret to making an authentic children's show was keep the children a safe distance from Dan Schneider and his weird foot fetishes. Who knew? But the bubble had one serious weakness: money. The reported budget was around $180,000 per episode. That sounds respectable until you remember television eats money the way Donkey Lips eats contraband cheeseburgers. Exterior scenes used Griffith Park and Franklin Canyon in Los Angeles. Interiors were filmed on a soundstage. Some bunk exteriors were reportedly miniature structures, only a few feet tall. So Camp Anawanna's hardest working cast member may have been forced perspective. No wonder Dr. Kahn never appeared. If he stepped beside a cabin, the entire illusion would collapse like the house at the end of Poltergeist. Still, the limited resources helped. Camp felt contained. A few cabins, a lake, a rec hall, a path through the woods that somehow led to every plot. Childhood never remembers geography accurately anyway. Your elementary school felt like the Pentagon until you returned as an adult and discovered the entire building was 3 hallways, 1 sad ficus, and the lingering smell of rectangle pizza. Then, there's the theme song. Camp Anowana, we hold you in our hearts. Tender, ceremonial, almost patriotic. Then Budnick changes, I hope we never part, into the line every child on Earth was genetically engineered to remember. The joke works because the song is sincere before it becomes stupid. That is the entire series in miniature. A real emotion enters the room wearing a camp uniform, and then Budnick draws a mustache on it. Cooksey remembered visiting Orlando with castmates when a crowd of kids recognized them and began singing the song. That was when he realized people were actually watching. Imagine being a teenager who had acted in Terminator 2, performed voice work, and played in a metal band, only to discover your most indestructible contribution to civilization might be one perfectly timed musical fart. Mozart had symphonies. Budnick had fart.
Go ahead, mock me. But it wasn't Stewie who was laughing at me. It was God!
History has spoken. Floating above all this chaos is Dr. Kahn, the camp director we hear but never see. As kids, we accepted him as mysterious. Watching now, he feels like a franchise owner who bought a summer camp, installed 1 loudspeaker, hired UGG from a classified ad, and moved to a protected location. The production explanation is even better. Slavkin said Dr. Kahn's announcements were created because edited episodes sometimes came in about a minute short. He would use stock footage, step into a recording booth, and improvise announcements until the episode reached its required length. So Camp Anawanna's all-powerful unseen authority was not carefully constructed mythology. He was human caulk. The producers found a hole in the runtime and filled it with a sarcastic cloud. And it worked. This is Dr. Kahn became one of the show's most recognizable devices. Which brings us to the Awful Waffle. In the premiere, Budnick frames another camper, Kent Flankman, and threatens him with a punishment involving a tennis racket pressed against the stomach and syrup poured over it. Later descriptions add whipped cream and even sandpaper, because apparently this breakfast-based hazing ritual came with expansion packs. The show never gives us a clean, complete demonstration. That makes it worse. The Awful Waffle lives in implication, where childhood terror receives free rent in excellent schools. Danny Cooksey compared its mystery to the glowing briefcase in Pulp Fiction. Quentin Tarantino had Golden Light and Philosophical Criminals. Nickelodeon had maple-flavored Guantanamo. Then episode 2 says, what if we stop hinting and just traumatize everybody directly? Budnick tells the story of Zeke the Plumber, a camp custodian whose nose was bitten off by a parrot. Unable to smell a gas leak, Zeke lights a match, explodes, and leaves behind only his plunger. I have several questions. Why was the parrot attacking employees? Why did the camp continue operating after a fatal explosion? And why is the plunger treated like a cursed Viking relic instead of evidence in an insurance investigation? This is not a ghost story. This is an OSHA report narrated by a child who just snorted 3 packets of grape drink mix. Michael and Telly touch the plunger. Zeke invades their dreams and digs through their private fears. He is burned, masked, silent, and carrying plumbing equipment with intent. He is Freddy Krueger if Freddy's mother had said, "You need a trade." Are you afraid of the dark? At least warned us that horror was coming. Salute Your Shorts hid Freddy in episode 2 between camp songs and jokes about Ruffles. Reddit threads decades later still fill with adults saying Zeke is permanently welded to their brains. He and the Awful Waffle are the two artifacts that escaped containment. If Nickelodeon ever opens a real Camp Anawanna, the waiver will just be a photo of both. Then the show does something that should have broken it. Michael does not return for season 2. The explanation is chickenpox. Not death. Not witness protection following the Awful Waffle hearings. Not a daring rescue from Zeke's nightmare dimension. Chickenpox. Eric MacArthur had left the series, so Ronnie Pinsky arrives as the replacement. And Pinsky is not Michael 2.0. He is cooler, smoother, more strategic, able to play piano, and introduced with the confidence of a child who has already renegotiated his camp contract. CC basically announces that Michael has been recycled into something better, which is a brutal farewell to a boy whose underwear is probably still hanging from the flagpole. The 1990s were ruthless about replacing television characters. One week, you are the center of the family, the next week, Aunt Viv looks different, and everybody has agreed not to discuss it. At first, the change annoyed some viewers. A retrospective in the AV Club described the feeling of betrayal when Michael disappeared. But losing the obvious protagonist made the ensemble stronger. Pinsky does not need to be our eyes. By season 2, we already live at Camp Anawanna. We know where the cabins are. We understand that Ugg has no power. We have accepted that the loudspeaker is our father now. The stories can rotate. Budnick becomes counselor during Upside Down Weekend and discovers that authority is mostly paperwork plus everybody hating you. Dina and Budnick develop a surprisingly believable romance, then nearly destroy it because both are 13 and communication technology will not be invented until Instant Messenger. Telly gets tennis plots. Sponge sneaks out. Pinsky schemes. Ugg absorbs consequences that should legally qualify him for hazard pay. Capture the Flag turns a camp game into a water balloon war movie, complete with a melodramatic platoon-style defeat for Budnick. Cooksey remembered arriving on set and discovering that the crew had armed themselves with water balloons. After 2 seasons of watching Budnick terrorize everybody, the adults reached a collective artistic decision. Get him! That is not acting. That is deferred workplace feedback. The series always lived near the edge of what Nickelodeon considered appropriate. The insults were sharp. Kids could be miserable. Budnick could be genuinely cruel. The show did not pretend every conflict was a harmless misunderstanding that could be repaired with a group hug and a licensed Paula Abdul song. But network standards still intervened. Sometimes magnificently. Slavkin recalled writing a scene in which the campers sneak out at night to get candy. Nickelodeon objected because of concerns about childhood obesity and suggested fruit instead. So the children risked severe punishment to obtain produce. Leaving the cabin after dark? Fine. Evading adult supervision? Wonderful. Potentially getting lost in the woods with a noseless ghost plumber? Builds resilience. A fun-sized candy bar? We cannot expose children to that darkness. The show complied, and somewhere in official Camp Anawanna history, a group of adolescents mounted a covert military operation for a ripe tangelo. Imagine Stand By Me, except the body is a cantaloupe.
Yeah. Sure.
This is where the larger contradiction becomes impossible to miss. The show's weirdness came from the same tension that eventually damaged it. The creative team wanted messy, recognizable childhood. Nickelodeon wanted an inexpensive children's product. For 2 seasons, those goals shared a bunk bed. Then the frame cracked. The show was popular. It was reportedly one of cable's strongest performers with children, and reruns kept drawing viewers for years. So this is not the usual story where ratings collapse, everybody pretends to be shocked, and the network replaces the show with 6 hours of a talking sponge. The production budget was already tight. Creator Steve Slavkin walked away during the 2nd season after Nickelodeon refused raises for the young cast in possible future seasons. Then the network wanted production moved from Los Angeles to Nickelodeon Studios in Orlando to cut costs. Most of the cast were children with families, schools, and lives in California. They were not prepared to relocate across the country because a corporation had discovered Florida contained cheaper cabins, and that was it. No grand finale about the last day of camp, no emotional packing montage, No Dr. Kahn announcement telling everyone their parents had arrived. Just a logistics problem large enough to erase an entire television world. Camp Anawanna was defeated by the only force Budnick could not intimidate: corporate real estate. The redheaded terror who survived Zeke, Thud Mackey, and projectile syrup finally met his match: a spreadsheet labeled cost efficiencies. That also explains why the series feels much longer than it was. Nickelodeon reran those 26 episodes heavily throughout the 1990s. In 2004, fans even voted the show back onto the network for anniversary programming. We did not receive many summers. We received the same summer until it became a core memory. 26 episodes is barely a modern streaming season and a half. Today, a prestige drama would use that much time to reveal somebody had a second phone. Yet say Camp Anawanna to a 90s kid and watch an entire filing cabinet open behind their eyes. The song, Ugh, the mullet, the plunger, the shorts. The phrase Awful Waffle, spoken with the solemnity of a classified weapons program, that is rerun alchemy. Nickelodeon took a tiny inventory and achieved emotional squatters' rights. The afterlife gets stranger. For years, fans wanted a complete physical release. When TV shows on DVD shut down in 2018, Salute Your Shorts was reportedly its most requested show that still lacked a DVD or Blu-ray collection. Attempts to make a release work ran into music licensing costs and cast royalties. As of the 2026 reunion, only part of the series was officially streaming or available digitally. 35 years later, all 26 episodes still did not have a complete official release. Of course, the camp with an invisible director also has invisible episodes. Even the home video release got sent home with chickenpox. But the cast has remained unusually close. Reunions in 2012, 2015, 2017, 2019, and again, for the 35th anniversary, kept bringing the campers back together. Cooksey once said that Eric MacArthur Michael later lived with him. Kirk Bailey and Michael Bauer stood as groomsmen at Cooksey's wedding. The chemistry we watched was not entirely manufactured. Those kids really did form their own strange little camp family. The newest reunion also paused to remember Kirk Bailey, who died in 2022. The cast described him as a mentor, a big brother figure, and the person who made frightening night shoots feel safe. That lands differently after spending this entire video roasting Ugg as the least effective authority figure since Principal Belding. Ugg was overwhelmed, vain, gullible, and professionally defeated by children every 7 minutes. Kirk Bailey, by their accounts, was the opposite when the camera stopped. He helped protect the space that allowed those kids to look so free on screen. That is the part nostalgia sometimes misses. We remember Camp Anawanna as real because, in one important way, it was not the cabins, not Dr. Kahn, definitely not Zeke's employment records. The feeling among the cast, the sense that they were together inside a weird, private little world was genuine. So, does Salute Your Shorts hold up? Absolutely. Camp Anawanna would fail an adult safety inspection before breakfast, but absolutely. The show became enormous, not despite its small scale, but because of it. The low budget made the world intimate. The imperfect-looking cast made the campers recognizable. The lack of adult control created freedom. The writing allowed bullies to be frightened, nerds to be essential, glamorous kids to be insecure, and sidekicks to become leaders. Its most ridiculous creation remains a tie between the Awful Waffle and an omnipotent director invented to patch missing runtime. Its greatest strength is the affection underneath the insults. These campers could humiliate one another before lunch and unite against an outside threat by dinner. That is childhood friendship. You may call me Butthead at noon, but if Thud Mackey arrives at 3, we are suddenly NATO. Only 26 episodes exist. The series ended over money and geography. A complete official release still does not exist. Yet the camp song survives. Zeke remains employed in our nightmares, and grown adults still say Camp Anawanna like they personally spent a summer there, and Ugg owes their parents a refund. The Camp Anawanna safety audit is therefore complete. Structurally unsound, psychologically questionable, wildly understaffed, breakfast-based torture, unresolved. Approved for another session immediately. right after somebody checks the gas lines, removes every tennis racket, and asks Dr. Kahn to prove he is a real person? Which Salute Your Shorts artifact has lived longest in your brain? Zeke the Plumber, the Awful Waffle, the theme song, or Dr. Kahn? And which episode deserves its own full fever dream breakdown next? If Camp Anawanna is still lodged in your memory, hit like, subscribe, and share this with the one friend who will immediately sing the forbidden line from the theme song. Thanks for hanging out in our weird little retro clubhouse. Until next time, keep the nostalgia strange, and please, for the love of Nickelodeon, do not touch the plunger.